and welcome to the Buzzcast. This podcast is brought to you by those who bring you the Appraisal Buzz newsletter, which goes out to 70,000 valuation professionals twice weekly. We also publish the Appraisal Buzz magazine twice a year. We just had our spring issue go out in February, and then the fall issue is due to come out in, I think it's going to hit mailboxes in early September. I'm Karen Connolly. I'm the VP of Operations for Altera Group, and today we have with us Brandon Boudreau, the Chief Operating Officer for Metro West Appraisal. Before we get started, we're going to have a quick message from our sponsor, and then I'll let Brandon introduce himself. Solidify, they are redefining the customer experience. Each appraisal is performed by the nation's top performing appraisers. Their national appraiser network is comprised of committed professionals who go above and beyond for both the lender and the homeowner. Our top appraisers are in turn rewarded with more exposure and more assignments that enable them to grow their business. Solidify ensures the right appraiser on every order, every time. Find out more at solidify.com. So the topic for today's podcast is business as unusual, addressing appraisals in the COVID-19 crisis. We're going to hear how one appraisal firm has handled the changes brought about by the virus in this new work environment. Brandon, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what you do?
Thanks, Karen, and thanks for having me as well. I'm excited to discuss this and all the changes that have been going on. So with me, I've been a lifelong appraiser, kind of a funny thing. I'm 41 years old, but I have 28 years experience. So I started in the appraisal industry. My dad was an appraiser, and it was my first job when I was 13 to, paste the photos into his reports and, put the location maps on by hand back then. So I've been around long enough to remember those days, but I'm a certified appraiser. When I got out of college, I started appraising in Arizona, and then moved up to Michigan right after right around the financial crisis, and worked on my own there, and then joined Metro West in 2010 in an operation role. Was promoted to COO in 2012. Just over 8 years ago, and now I handle day-to-day operations for Metro West and our 250 employees across the country.
Brandon, listen, when you start talking about appraisals and a glue stick, you're seriously dating yourself.
I know. It's been an unbelievable thing. I remember being a kid and doing that, and when I was 16 and old enough to drive, I started taking the comp photos and developing the film and telling myself I'll never be an appraiser, but this is a fun part-time job when I'm a kid, and then here I am 20 years later still doing it. So I've spent my whole life in this industry.
Well, a lot of the changes early on in your career then was like, when we went from film to digital, and that kind of transitioned slowly over time as people, became more confident with the technology. But what have been some of the challenges that you've seen that have been almost instantaneous with this COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think it was mainly the confusion around the new process. So, I don't know that everyone really realizes how many different, stakeholders are involved in the process, from the lenders to the AMCs, to the appraisers, to the software companies, to the platform companies. So managing all of that in kind of immediate and in real time was the challenge. Trying to digest the changes from the different agencies, from FHA to Fannie and Freddie, to different lenders who had a lot of questions around it. I know our team was working around the clock when this happened, and doing so while going remote. So it was kind of a double challenge. Our office headquarters went remote on March 12th, and just about the time these changes started taking effect. So not only were we all learning to work from home and support our 200 appraisers across the country, but also learning to identify the new product types, make sure they match our platform, and that the big appraisal software companies were also leading there. But that's actually, of this whole thing, I was really proud of our industry as a whole and how well we adapted to it and how quick appraisers, technology, AMCs handled it. It was a lot more seamless than I think it could have been. So it seemed like everyone had their disaster plans in effect, and they worked. And so I was pretty proud of us as an industry. And I think the appraisers going in the homes during these uncertain times, the ones that were doing interiors and still continue to do, didn't get near enough credit as they should. I mean, we're all applauding our frontline workers, but appraisers are frontline workers, and many of them are going in, 30, 40, 50 homes a month during this, and in some very hard hit areas. So I just think as a whole, we need to show a lot of gratitude and appreciation to those appraisers who have kept our industry going, stepping in the front. But that lends to PPE and trying to get those when hospitals couldn't even get them. And I know us as an organization, we're trying to get and secure whatever we can. It's gotten better now, but in the early days, that was all, no one saw something like that coming.
Well, I have to say I was pretty impressed with the GSEs, HUD, FHA, USDA, being able to, I did not know they were capable of turning on a dime like that, which, it looked from the outside like they effectively did turn on a dime to institute some of the changes. But how are you guys tracking those changes that were brought about by all of the agencies in response to the pandemic?
Yeah, we've had to add a lot of new vernacular in there, like, COVID exteriors and COVID desktops, and what does that mean? And, and I really think it was tough for the appraiser population. I mean, our job as an operational team in the appraisal industry is really to keep our ear and a pulse on this. So it was fairly easy for us to understand it, but for appraisers who out there are just focused on appraising, I think a lot of the confusion was, hey, I don't feel safe doing interiors right now, let's just switch these to exteriors, and kind of educating our team, and unfortunately letting them know, look, those decisions aren't in your hand. They're in the hands of the user. So, I think one thing that kind of opened our eyes too is that there isn't just one master in our industry that sets the rules. If Fannie makes a rule, it doesn't necessarily mean Freddie is. Or FHA comes out with a set of rules, it doesn't mean that applies to Fannie. And unfortunately, most of those rules are not up to the appraisers. And so that's been the toughest thing, kind of trying to straighten out when appraisers were talking to homeowners and saying, hey, if the homeowner wasn't comfortable maybe saying, hey, I don't have to come in, maybe we could get this switched to an exterior when they're doing a cash out refi and we know they can't. So some of those were some difficult and confusing calls and keeping people kind of on the same page. But it's settled down now. I think everyone's kind of got it and understands. But those first few weeks were a bit confusing.
All right. So just a quick word from our sponsor for this podcast. Listen, nobody wants to work more for less. And to some, the appraisal industry looks like it's headed that way. You have to do more for the same money, and now you have less time to yourself. The good news is Data Master can change that. With their easy-to-use software, Data Master lets you spend more time analyzing and less time typing. I'm all for that. Plus, you get more information than any other data import product. Head to www.datamaster.usa/buzz for more information and to learn how you can save an hour per report. Data Master provides the right data at the right time for the right decision. Learn more at www.datamasterusa.com/buzz. So back to the GSEs and the changes that they made, Brandon. What was the primary confusion that appraisers saw around those new policies, and how have you guys been able to keep all that straight?
Well, I applaud them for making the changes that they did to try to limit the amount of interior appraisals. But I guess one of the silver linings that have come from this is that it does seem that the industry as a whole does understand the value of the appraiser, especially in times like this where we're going to see market swings. And anybody that's been around from 2005 to 2009 remembers how quickly things can change. And it seems like we've been in kind of a Goldilocks scenario for a decade now with increasing values and rates and things like that. And that it would just go up and up. I think now is the time that, the appraiser's value is really going to shine, because we really need to be experts in these markets that may start to turn or see dips in value, which is, forecasted. But like I said, I think the biggest confusion was that the GSEs were really allowing lenders a little bit of leeway on their product type. But they didn't go as far as to say, interiors, if you're doing a cash out refi, they didn't touch those. And unfortunately, that is the majority of what we're seeing, at least in our firm. And we work with the vast majority of AMCs, and through them and the lenders that we work directly with, probably vast majority of the lenders in the country. And since purchase volume's down, and really rate and term refis are a smaller portion, majority of what you're seeing are Americans trying to access their equity, which is requiring interior appraisals. So we're taking all the steps, to social distance and do those interior inspections the safest way we can. But I do wish that the requirements would be a bit more relaxed in regards to those interior inspections. I think it could have gone a step further for those type of transactions, because that is the majority of what we're seeing now. But I guess the upside is that they really do value the appraiser's opinion in going inside those homes.
Well, that's great news. So what new technology have you implemented around these new appraisal inspection flexibilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a lot of the technology has been there, and as simple as FaceTime or, things like that to get more information from the homeowner. I know a lot on these, per use PAP on exterior and desktops, the appraisers still have to validate some of the information in the home. Some of the newer technology that has come out in Metro West, we're, product neutral. So we'll use any technology, whatever's latest and greatest. We don't incorporate our own proprietary technology in that regard, but we have been using many of the industry leaders that you see out there. And it's great because it has a lot of fraud mitigation with, geo-stamping and direct, photo uploads. So you're not getting, the neighbor's house's photos in there. So I think that helps a lot with some of the desktops and exteriors. So validating some of that information for appraisers, if they're using that, if they can make the contact to the homeowner, it still is just a value add and an assistant to the appraiser. We're not seeing any lenders require that. I think it should be. I think in this time that the next step that should be taken, because it doesn't look like this virus is going away anytime soon, would be to have those homeowner-led inspection technology take place of the appraiser going in until a time is safe. That would allow these transactions to still go through. You could make it subject to an interior inspection down the road to make sure there was no fraud on what they're seeing. But I would like to see that technology. I guess allowed is not the right word. It's currently allowed, but not in lieu of. I think it should be in lieu of. Sending an appraiser out to a home it was always historically one of the most expensive and time-consuming parts of the appraisal process. And now it's putting people at risk. I think you could mitigate that risk, speed up the appraisal process, still lean on the appraiser to, do what is the most valuable part of the job, and that's, reconciling data and giving an informed opinion of value. So we're using that technology, but like I said, I really do think lenders and GSEs need to take a step further and allow it in lieu of interior inspections when applicable.
Yeah, I think initially appraisers felt like this was a stepping stone or the slippery slope to, the third party bifurcated appraisal. But, everything I've seen so far shows that the appraisers needed now more than ever to do the analytics, regardless of who's taking that interior inspection. And that was reiterated by Scott Reuter with Freddie Mac and Lyle Radke with Fannie Mae on a couple of recent webinars that Appraisal Buzz posted. So I was glad to hear that. So for our listeners, go right ahead, Brandon.
No, I just wanted to add one point. I completely agree. I understand the fear that, appraisers have. We have the same fear, being an appraisal firm, that bifurcated is somehow sidelining us to a way, in the same way that waivers felt that way when they came out. But waivers can't exist without appraisers' data. And so, we are still extremely relevant in the process, obviously needed. I think, the harder part for the industry, for appraisers, the lending community with appraisers has been the amount of time it takes to get these reports, because they're closing loans so quickly now that, the appraisal is usually the longest, step in the process. So this would speed it up. And I think most appraisers would tell you that their values at their desk, not driving and shooting comps and walking through a 1,000 square foot ranch that they've seen a million times. If they have good data on the interior of that property, they could do their job great without having to spend, an hour in traffic. So hopefully it moves that way. I mean, I think with the GSEs allowing the waivers and willing to take on that risk, that opening the risk up to this new technology in lieu of appraisers actually making inspections only makes us more valuable, allows us to, perform faster. And so I do hope it goes that way, and I don't think that eliminates the need for us at all.
And for our listeners, if you've grown frustrated with endlessly pursuing new appraisal work and not reaping any of the benefits, Metro West is here to help. They understand and work to alleviate the pain points commonly felt by appraisers to enable personal and financial growth for their staff. After all, they've been owned and operated by appraisers since the company opened in 1987. Metro West Appraisal is an equal opportunity employer and are always looking for certified residential real estate appraisers to join their team. Brandon, how does one go about joining the Metro West team?
Thanks for asking. I think the most simple way is to go to our website, metrowestappr.com. And there is a hiring page on there that you could click on and upload your resume and input your information. And our appraiser relations team, will follow up with that. We're a great fit for any appraiser out there. We really consider them partnerships. And we've been in business over 30 years, built on that partnership, and our tenure is very, very long because I think we provide a lot of value.
Awesome. So I started thinking about, our previous discussion, and with the GSE flexibility, the changes that they made, and it was really designed so that appraisers did not have to go into the property. In reality, what percentage of appraisers do you see going into the property? I mean, we've done a couple of webinars with Fannie and Freddie, and they've asked a poll question right up front. In the past week, how many interior inspections have you done? And I'd say 70% of the responses came back and said that almost all of their inspections that they were physically going into the property. Are you seeing the same kind of thing with your staff?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple data points I could share that appraisers would find interesting. So at Metro West, we have a little over 200 staff appraisers. Right now, about 20% of them are unwilling to complete interiors. And of course, we're not forcing them to do so. And we think people with higher risk absolutely shouldn't. So it kind of comes from both sides. So inside right now, we're seeing about 20% of our staff unwilling to complete them. Historically, as a firm, and as I said, we're very, very diverse, probably the most diverse appraisal firm in the country. So we have a very good vantage point with major lenders, regional lenders, credit unions, private portfolio lenders. Typically, we're between 5 to 10% of our volume is desktop or exterior. Right now, it's sitting at about 20%. So while that has doubled, you're still looking at 75 to 80% of our work is still interior. And that's largely because the majority of the loans that are being done in this, refi boom that we're in are cash out. So, I tend to think when the purchase market comes back open and some of these, as we're seeing, like in Michigan, real estate being able to be, allowed again, becoming essential workers, classified as that, you might see an uptick in that. But right now, it's about 20% of our work is contact free.
All right, Brandon. Well, thanks for being with us today. I think it was a great discussion. And for our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the discussion, which provided some valuable information about how one appraisal firm is handling the COVID crisis. And look for our next Buzzcast episode. And until then, stay safe out there.
Thank you, Karen.